Why multiple marathoning? Olympic gold medalist Frank Shorter said that you can't run another marathon until you've forgotten your last one. If that's so, then a lot of runners out there have short memories. It's rare to finish a marathon and, after the obligatory utterance of never again, not think you could have run at least a little faster if only X, Y, and Z hadn't occurred. If you've run a less than satisfying marathon, but it didn't seem to take too much out of you, and if another likely site for a good race looms several weeks ahead, then you might want to consider drawing on your horse remounting skills. Welcome back to Hobby Jogger Elite. Today, I want to talk to you about some of my future racing plans, but also just thank everyone for all of the support on the previous videos and sort of the full training series, the full lead up to the Chicago Marathon. You may very well know now that I ran the Chicago Marathon. It did not exactly meet my own expectations when it came to the goals that I had set for myself. My ultimate plan for the race went well for most of it, but ultimately did not finish the way I had anticipated. Definitely seemed a little bit down in the dumps upon reviewing the footage from the last video, which I don't love because as I get away from race day more and more as time passes, I am definitely filled with more gratitude just for the fact that I finished my first marathon major. It was an incredible experience being out there in Chicago. I do hope to do it someday in the future once again, but just did not happen to be my day. And as a lot of you stated, and as I have continued to remind myself, in order to have that ideal, perfect marathon experience, a lot of things have to line up for you, and I think just a few too many things were not lining up for me on that day the same way they did in some past races, even ones as recent as a few months ago. So you can't win them all, and they don't all go perfectly. It's just a good reminder that the marathon can be extremely humbling and also be a great lesson in how to move forward with things, which is what I want to talk about today when it comes to racing. I will let you know, and if you have been following me on Strava, maybe you have noticed already, I'm not letting go of this marathon fitness quite yet. I do want to race again in the near future because I've been kind of taking recovery day by day. I didn't really have any plans at all that were concrete after Chicago in the lead up. And, a few weeks before I raced Chicago, just sort of as like the taper was beginning, I was talking with my fiance about marathons. They're wonderful and everything, but they take so much out of you. But I feel like now with like the new shoes and everything and just more like access to knowledge about recovery and how to work back into things, it is not out of this world to think that I could potentially run more than one marathon per training block. There are a ton of people out there who do this on a regular basis. Probably not the best idea for those who are just getting into running marathons, maybe their first or second marathon. These things are still very hard on your body, but as the years pass, as marathon training blocks stack on other marathon training blocks, it makes more sense to not reduce all of training in this huge lead up to one single result on one single race day. So just kind of talking about this, talked to her about always wanting to run the Philly Marathon, which I have reached out to specifically the primary charity that works with Philly Marathon, and they got back to me and I've been put on a wait list for that. Once things get sold out, or once they sort of hit their maximum occupancy or participant entry number, if you will, things are pretty much set in stone. So I'm not really counting on getting a bib into the Philly Marathon. It would be a dream come true if I did. I do intend to run it at some point in the next couple of years. If I don't get a bib this year, I'll probably enter it next year. In the meantime, I have decided to sign up for another marathon. Did not have the intention of doing so before Chicago. If I did, I probably would not have tapered as heavily into Chicago if I had this multi-marathon racing plan in mind. But 2 days after Chicago, went for a run for the first time, ran for 4 miles. Didn't feel the worst. Quads were a little bit dusty, they were feeling a little crunchy when I was going down those hills. Just slightly increased, my runs by a mile or two each day before I reached sort of 7 days post Chicago Marathon. So this most recent Sunday, I decided to see if I could go for a nice little long run. I had already signed up for a second marathon before that because I was just feeling pretty decent in those following days. I know it takes your body as a whole more time than just a few days to recover from a marathon, and that's typically why people are like, don't run another marathon so close to running a marathon. Makes sense. I'm sort of like a trial by error. I need to as the kids say, FAFO, family friendly, fool around and find out for myself. That is how I learn, by experience. I do want to acknowledge that I know that this could go poorly when it comes to signing up for this quote unquote sort of revenge marathon, but I'm not really looking at it as a revenge marathon because there's nothing to get revenge on. Chicago was an amazing, wonderful experience, and I'm not ultimately, in the grand scheme of life, all that upset with how it went, because again, I'm more grateful for being able to run Chicago than I am disappointed in the result or the experience as a whole. I will always remember that trip to Chicago with my family, with running the marathon, in a positive light. It is more so that I feel like there is fitness to be capitalized on, and I owe it to myself to do things that I'm going to ultimately enjoy. I love running marathons, so why not run more? Am I right? I think more than anything is this sort of recognition that the mental fitness is still there. Usually I lose that mental fitness. I feel that sense of like mental sharpness dissipating, going away entirely, even after some very disappointing marathons where I didn't hit the mark or the target that I was going for, and I say, you know what, I need to let my mind rest when it comes to chasing whatever this goal was, sort of having this intense structure on a regular basis with running, and I need to let my body rest. Obviously, the body needs to rest and recover following any successful or failed marathon. Still covering 42 plus kilometers, 26 plus miles in the process, which is a feat in itself for your body, but the desire to continue to chase this goal is still there, and my body is, coming along when it comes to the recovery. So the long run this past weekend felt amazing. I felt very strong, very fit, very solid for only being 7 days post marathon. I only did go 18 total miles, did 6 by a mile with really no prescribed paces. Sort of just fell into like a very smooth marathon effort for those first 3 reps, and then went 10 seconds or so quicker for the second 3, so not quite threshold. That went well, feeling decent coming off of that long run. I am now, at the time of recording this, less than 20 days from my second marathon of the year. And I know you might be saying, you're an idiot. Why are you doing this? Like I said, I just have to find out for myself whether I am an idiot or not. Hopefully, we're gonna find out. We're gonna have some definitive proof one way or another. So the registration for the 2 or so that I am looking at are still open. They're not sold out. They're more so like local races. So long story short, I am running a second marathon. So very excited to see how this goes. Plans are essentially to run a second marathon, take some downtime, get into some more like short distance, like 5K, 10K speed training throughout the earlier part of the winter as I'm sort of building mileage back, get into some shorter races, and then have a marathon specific section leading up to April. So those are sort of the loose plans here for the near future. That is pretty much everything I have. We will catch up soon. Peace.